Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into something that touches so many of us, often in ways we don't quite grasp. We're talking about trauma. And not just the big, obvious events, but also the quieter things, like chronic stress, maybe an absent parent, emotionally speaking, or just that feeling of not being safe or seen over a long time.
That's absolutely right. And it's really striking how deeply these experiences can shape us. They literally condition our bodies, train our brains to look for danger, and they even mold our sense of who we are, sometimes making us sort of pull back or feel smaller. The body really does keep a record. It remembers things the conscious mind might try to forget.
Right, and this leads so many people into living in what the source material calls survival mode.
Hmm.
It's described as the state that was, well, smart and necessary once, a way to cope, but when it sticks around long term, it just drains everything.
Really does. Your energy, your ability to connect with others, your peace of mind, it takes a toll.
So this deep dive is really about understanding what that survival mode actually is physiologically, psychologically, and crucially, how we can start to move beyond it, how we can use, science-informed ways to actually rewire those trauma patterns.
And that idea of rewiring, it's so key. It speaks to the brain's incredible ability to change, its neuroplasticity. Even when these deep patterns are set, the brain can forge new paths, new ways of being.
Okay, so let's start right there then. This survival mode, what exactly is it? Because it sounds like much more than just a feeling, as you said.
Oh, absolutely. It's a literal state, neurological, physiological. Think
Yeah.
about your autonomic nervous system. It's kind of like your body's autopilot. When it senses danger, and that could be a real threat now, or even just a memory triggered in the present, it takes the wheel. It floods your system with stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, preparing you.
Ah, the classic fight or flight response.
Exactly. But it's actually a bit broader than that. There's also freeze, where you might feel numb or like unable to move, and fawn, which often looks like intense people-pleasing, trying to appease the perceived threat to stay safe.
Okay. And what does that feel like psychologically to be living in that state?
It often feels like this constant sort of low-level hum of worry or maybe dread. You might find yourself compulsively overworking, maybe needing to numb out somehow. Difficulty with trust is a big one. Or just feeling disconnected from yourself, from your body, from others.
And the body itself gives signs too, right? I remember reading about shallow breathing, muscle tension.
Yes, definitely. Clenched muscles, digestive problems are very common. Insomnia, or just feeling bone tired all the time. Those are the somatic, the body-based echoes.
Yeah.
Your system is basically braced for impact, constantly scanning.
Even when nothing dangerous is actually happening.
Precisely. That's the hallmark of a hypervigilant nervous system. The amygdala, the brain's sort of alarm system, gets stuck in the on position.
Like a smoke detector that keeps blaring long after the burnt toast is gone. It just won't reset.
That's a great analogy. It's constantly interpreting cues as potential danger signals, which explains why you might feel perpetually on edge, jumpy, irritable, or find it almost impossible to truly relax without feeling, I don't know, guilty or agitated. Your nervous system is acting as if the original threat is still here.
Okay, so it's this really deep, full body state of high alert. That sounds incredibly exhausting. How do people even function day to day when they're stuck there?
It is exhausting. And over time, we develop coping mechanisms, ways to navigate the world from within that state. Two really common ones mentioned are overfunctioning and dissociation. Overfunctioning can look like, well, being constantly busy. Perfectionism, overachieving, maybe intense people-pleasing, like that fight-flight energy gets channeled into doing, doing, doing.
Anything to avoid slowing down and feeling what's underneath.
Exactly. Constant motion. Dissociation, on the other hand, is more about disconnection. Zoning out, feeling detached from your body or your emotions, maybe a sense of unreality, like you're watching your life from a distance. This ties more into the freeze or fawn response.
Checking out mentally when you can't physically escape.
Right. It's a brilliant survival strategy in the moment. When fighting or fleeing weren't options, it protected you.
But the problem is when these become the default way of being, long after the danger's passed.
Precisely. They're creative responses to danger, absolutely. But when they become chronic, they really erode your ability to be present, to feel joy, to connect authentically now. They keep you surviving, not thriving.
And how does this get wired into the brain physically?
Well, a key thing is how trauma impacts different brain regions. During intense threat, the prefrontal cortex, our thinking, planning, rational brain, tends to get less active, sort of goes offline. Meanwhile, the more primitive areas, especially the amygdala, the alarm center, take charge. And memory storage gets affected too. The hippocampus often stores trauma memories in fragments, sensory details, emotions, body sensations, rather than a coherent story with a clear beginning, middle, and end.
Which explains why triggers can feel like you're reliving the event, not just remembering it.
Exactly that. Those fragments get activated, and your whole system reacts as if it's happening right now. Trauma fundamentally trains the brain to prioritize survival above everything else.
Okay, so the brain, the body. But it doesn't stop there, does it? It shapes our core beliefs, too.
Oh, absolutely. Trauma leaves a really deep imprint on our identity. We can develop these subconscious core beliefs, things like, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I have to earn rest, feeling things is dangerous, I can only rely on myself. These aren't usually conscious thoughts, but they become like these underlying blueprints, guiding our choices, our relationships, how we see the world.
And unless we become aware of them, we just keep operating from those old blueprints, even if they don't fit anymore.
Exactly. And this state also messes with emotional regulation. You might swing between being flooded with intense feelings like rage, panic, deep grief, and then feeling completely numb, cut off from your emotions. It points to having a narrower window of tolerance. Relatively small stressors can push you outside that window into either overwhelm or shutdown.
So the goal isn't necessarily to never feel intense things, but to widen that window so you can handle more without completely losing it. Precisely. It's about building the capacity to be with your experience. And survival mode also tends to create cognitive rigidity. When you feel unsafe, nuance goes out the window. Things become very black and white. Safe, unsafe, good, bad. This can lead to rigid thinking like, I must always be in control, or nobody can be trusted.
Safety allows for the gray areas.
Yes, the material makes that point really clearly. It's within safety that we regain cognitive flexibility, the ability to see complexity.
Wow. Okay. So we've painted quite a picture of how deep this goes, brain, body, beliefs. But the really hopeful part, the core of this deep dive, is that this isn't permanent. We can actually change this wiring.
Yes. And that brings us to neuroplasticity. It's really the miracle in all of this. It's the brain's built-in ability to reorganize itself, to form new connections, new pathways throughout our entire lives. It's not just a nice idea, it's biology. When we consistently engage in new practices, especially ones that involve safety, repetition, and positive emotion, we can literally build new neural roads that let us respond differently to the present.
And this is why just talking about it isn't always enough, right? The source material really emphasizes somatic, body-based practices.
That's right. Talk therapy is hugely important for understanding our stories, making sense of things. But trauma lives in the body's sensations, its tension patterns, the nervous system's set point. So somatic practices are crucial because they work directly with that level. They help the body release stored energy and signal safety from the inside out.
What are some examples of those?
Well, simple things, often. Grounding, just feeling your feet on the floor, your body in the chair. Orienting, slowly looking around the room, letting your eyes take in your actual surroundings, tell your brain, hey, I'm here now. Breath work is key, especially focusing on a longer exhale. That sends a direct signal of calm to the nervous system. And gentle movements, slow stretches, yoga, tai chi, even just intentional shaking can help release that pent-up physical energy.
It's like learning to speak the nervous system's language, which is sensation and presence.
Exactly. These practices send safety cues up to the brain, often via the vagus nerve, which is this major nerve connecting brain and body, and it plays a huge role in regulating our state. So building a foundation for healing is really about learning nervous system regulation, not about being calm 24/7, that's impossible, but about building the capacity to return to a balanced state, your center, after you get knocked off course.
Developing that inner resilience, that bounce back.
Yes, exactly. A more flexible nervous system. The material suggests things like predictable daily routines, maybe exploring practices like cold exposure or other gentle ways to tone the vagus nerve, finding healthy outlets for expression journaling, art, movement, and really prioritizing the basics, sleep, good nourishment. These are foundational.
And all this contributes to cultivating what's called felt safety, which is different from just intellectually knowing you're safe.
This is such a crucial distinction. You have to feel it in your body. It's about learning to tune into those subtle internal cues that say, okay, in this specific moment, I am actually all right. The source suggests asking yourself small questions daily, like, what could help me feel just 1% safer right now? Or can I just be with my breath for 60 seconds? Or what sensation tells me I'm okay right now?
reframing safety as a practice, not just a place you arrive at.
Yes, it's something you cultivate moment by moment.
Okay, and for people whose early lives lacked that safety, maybe lacked nurturing, another piece mentioned is inner reparenting. What does that involve?
It's essentially about consciously giving yourself the consistent care, the safety, the emotional validation that you might have missed out on earlier in life. Practically, it means learning to talk to yourself differently with kindness, with compassion, especially when you're struggling. Setting internal boundaries, like telling yourself, I won't abandon myself in this feeling, or I'll protect my energy. It can even involve visualizing your younger self and using your adult self's resources and wisdom to meet that inner child's needs. You essentially become your own secure base.
That sounds incredibly profound and potentially really healing.
Yeah.
The material also lays out a kind of step-by-step guide for rewiring these patterns.
Yeah, it's a helpful framework. It would go something like this. First, awareness. Just start noticing your patterns, triggers, reactions, beliefs, but with curiosity, not judgment, like you're just observing. Second, regulate. When you notice you're activated, triggered, pause. Use those grounding or breathing tools to help soothe your system in the moment. Third, relate. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. Cultivate safe, supportive connections with others. Secure relationships are incredibly regulating for the nervous system. Fourth, reframe. Gently start questioning those old core beliefs born from trauma. Ask, is this really true today? Explore alternative, more present moment perspectives. Again, with curiosity. And fifth, restore. Actively make space for joy, play, pleasure. These are vital nutrients for healing, often the first things that go in survival mode. Bring them back intentionally.
And the emphasis is on consistency with these steps, right? Not aiming for some huge, intense breakthrough.
Absolutely. Small, steady steps. Consistency is what builds those new neural pathways much more effectively than trying to force massive shifts all at once. Slow and steady wins the race here.
We've covered so much ground. Before we wrap up, let's maybe touch on a few common concerns that people often have around this whole topic, drawing from some FAQs in the material. First off, how can someone really tell if they're stuck in survival mode? It can feel kind of normal after a while.
Yeah, it can become the baseline. The key signs are often those persistent things we talked about, that underlying chronic exhaustion, even if you technically sleep enough, feeling driven towards hyperproductivity or conversely feeling numb and disconnected. That general feeling of being on edge, jumpy, easily startled. If those resonate consistently, it's a good indicator your nervous system might be stuck in that heightened state.
And this idea of actually rewiring the brain, is that, scientifically sound, or more of a metaphor?
Oh, it's absolutely grounded in science. Neuroplasticity is real. The brain genuinely can and does change its structure and function based on experience and intentional practice. We can build new, healthier neural pathways. It takes work, but the capacity is fundamentally there.
What about talk therapy? Why isn't it always enough on its own for trauma?
Talk therapy is incredibly valuable, let me stress that, for processing the story, gaining insights. But again, trauma isn't just a story held in the mind. It's held in the body's physiology, in the nervous system's learned responses. So effective healing often needs to include approaches like these somatic practices that directly address how the trauma is stored in the body.
Got it. And the vagus nerve comes up a lot. Can you just briefly explain why it's so important in this context?
Sure. The vagus nerve is the main nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest, safe and social part of our nervous system. So practices that gently stimulate or tone the vagus nerve, like deep breathing with long exhales, humming, gargling, even cold splashes on the face, directly help shift us out of fight or flight and into that calmer, more regulated state. It's a direct line to signaling safety.
Okay. And inner reparenting, practically speaking, what does that look like day to day?
It's about learning to treat yourself the way a consistently kind, attuned, wise parent would. So when you make a mistake, instead of harsh self-criticism, you pause and offer yourself understanding. When you're overwhelmed, you ask, what do I need right now? It's about offering yourself compassion, validation, and consistent presence. Showing up for yourself as that secure base you might have needed but didn't get.
And the big one, how long does healing take?
Ah, yes. Everyone asks that. And the honest answer is, it's not linear. It doesn't follow a set timeline. It's more like spirals. You'll likely have periods of real growth and progress, and then maybe times where old patterns resurface or things feel harder again. That's normal. It's a process that unfolds over time with consistent practice and usually good support. You keep moving forward, even if it feels like circling back sometimes.
If this conversation about trauma, survival mode, and the path towards healing has sparked something for you, perhaps consider subscribing to the Deep Dive. We explore topics like this regularly, and we genuinely love to hear your thoughts or reflections in the comments below. It's such an important conversation. So, bringing this all together, it feels like the core message is that even if trauma has profoundly shaped us, it doesn't define our future. What looks like dysfunction now.
Was very likely your most intelligent, creative strategy for survival back when you needed it most. It kept you safe.
That shift in perspective is huge. It moves away from "I'm broken" towards "I adapted brilliantly." Trauma taught the system to survive, often at great cost. But this healing path is about learning it's safe now. Safe to actually live.
Exactly. To feel, to connect, to thrive beyond those old survival constraints.
And the source material leaves us with this really beautiful, almost poetic thought to consider.
Yes, that the journey isn't about forcing yourself into some rigid ideal of strength or perfect calm. It's more like a gentle but still radical transformation. It's the slow, courageous unfurling of a self and a nervous system that learned it had to stay small, stay hidden, stay braced.
You aren't behind. You are becoming.
A really powerful place to pause. Becoming more fully yourself, capable of meeting life with more flexibility, more presence.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it offered some valuable insights.